Humanity lay crushed under the boot of Draconis oppression. Herded into cages, collared like dogs, humans languished as playthings of sadistic alien masters. On the Draconis throne world, a defiant human slave named Sean Porter endured unspeakable humiliations at the clawed hands of his cruel owner, Sirius. Through sheer force of will, Sean resisted the brutality, never letting them break his spirit. With cunning and skill honed in captivity, he engineered a daring nighttime escape. Fighting past guards with savage fury, he fled to a hidden rebel safehouse. There, a grizzled resistance leader revealed Sean's unique genome held the key to annihilating the Draconis with a targeted bioweapon. Smuggled onto a cargo freighter, Sean returned to the shattered remains of Earth. In the ruins, he made contact with a ragtag band of human survivors. In their concealed bunker, Sean uncovered the horrific truth. A genetically engineered Draconis plague had wiped out most of humanity, leaving only scattered remnants to be enslaved. Reeling from the revelation, alarms suddenly blared as a Draconis patrol closed in. In the chaos, Sean snatched a portable gene-tailoring device and a single vial of the plague pathogen. As he fled the crumbling bunker, deadly alien weapons fire at his back. Sean swore to reverse engineer that plague. He vowed to unleash it without mercy, avenging humanity by eradicating the Draconis monsters who destroyed Earth. The fight to reclaim humanity's future had begun. Sean's stolen freighter streaked through the void, Earth's ruined sphere receding behind him. In the cargo hold, he uncovered a cache of weapons and survival gear, no doubt intended for the Draconis garrison awaiting resupply. He armed himself grimly, checking the charge on a pulse rifle before concealing it beneath a ragged cloak. The freighter shuddered as it dropped out of warp, the curved inner surface of a Dyson sphere filling the viewports. Sean's heart raced as he guided the ship toward the cavernous docking bay of the sphere's hub. Towering Draconis warships hung in neat rows, attended by swarms of maintenance drones. Uniformed reptilians strode along the concourses, oblivious to the human interloper among them. With a hiss of releasing pressure, the freighter settled onto its assigned landing pad. Sean concealed the plague vial beneath his clothing and slipped down the ramp, just another courier drone delivering routine cargo. He moved purposefully, head down to avoid drawing attention. Around him, the clamor of 1,000 alien voices echoed off the vaulted ceilings. Sean made his way deeper into the hub's labyrinthian passages, following the route he had memorized from stolen schematics. The central atmospheric processor lay ahead, a vast chamber where the entire sphere's air supply was cycled and purified. It was the perfect place to unleash the plague, ensuring maximum spread. As he approached the chamber, a sharp voice rang out behind him. "Halt, slave! What are you doing in this section?" Sean spun, pulse rifle leaping into his hands. The Draconis soldier facing him snarled, drawing his own weapon. Sean fired, a lance of searing energy burning through the alien's chest. The reptilian crumpled, but alarms began blaring throughout the hub. Sean charged into the chamber, racing along gantries suspended above the yawning depths. Bolts of plasma sizzled past him as Draconis guards converged on his position. He ducked into an alcove, returning fire as scales and ichor splattered the walls. At the chamber's heart, Sean reached the primary atmospheric intake. With trembling hands, he withdrew the plague vial, preparing to hurl it into the swirling vortex. A clawed hand seized his arm, wrenching him around. He stared into the enraged eyes of Sirius, his former master. "Did you think you could escape me, slave?" Sirius hissed, fangs bared. "I'll flay you alive for this." Sean headbutted the Draconis, feeling the satisfying crunch of a shattered snout. As Sirius reeled back, Sean twisted free, snatching the vial from the alien's grasp. With a defiant roar, he hurled it into the intake. The vial shattered, vanishing into the maelstrom. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a shuddering groan, the processor ground to a halt. Noxious smoke began billowing from vents as the plague took hold. Sirius lunged at Sean with a screech of pure hatred. They grappled on the gantry, trading brutal blows. Around them, Draconis soldiers began choking and convulsing, scales sloughing from their bodies as they collapsed. Sirius's eyes widened in horror as he too began to succumb, his flesh liquefying. With a last burst of strength, Sean heaved Sirius's disintegrating form over the railing, watching him vanish into the abyss below. Alarms shrieked and containment doors slammed shut, but it was too late. The plague was spreading, ravaging the Drachnes with terrifying efficiency. Sean staggered to an observation port, gazing out at the carnage unfolding across the hub. Everywhere, Draconis writhed and perished, their mighty ships drifting lifeless. The sight filled him with grim satisfaction, even as harrowing grief for Miranda threatened to pull him under. He knew the fight was just the beginning. There were countless more Draconis worlds out there, teeming with the monsters who had butchered humanity. But this was a start, a devastating blow against the heart of their empire. Sean turned away from the viewport, making his way back to the freighter. The battle for humanity's future had only just begun, and he would not rest until every last Draconis lay dead at his feet. Sean's stolen freighter sliced through the inky void, leaving behind the devastation he had wrought on the Draconis hub world. His hands trembled as he guided the ship, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. The weight of what he had accomplished, and the lives he had taken, pressed down on him like a physical force. A proximity alert chirped, startling Sean from his dark reverie. A massive Draconis transport loomed ahead, its hull dripping with weapon emplacements. Sean's mind raced. He could try to outrun it, but the freighter's engines were no match for the transport's superior speed. An idea formed, born of desperation and audacity. Sean adjusted course, bringing his ship alongside the transport's docking bay. He donned the tattered clothing of a human slave, concealing his weapons beneath the rags. With a deep breath, he opened the airlock and stepped into the cavernous hold of the Draconis vessel. Alien voices echoed through the chamber. Sean kept his head down, shuffling forward with the subservient gait he had perfected during his years of captivity. A pair of Draconese guards strode past, barely sparing him a glance. He allowed himself a small smile. They saw only what they expected to see. Another broken human, not worth their attention. As Sean moved deeper into the ship, he caught snippets of conversation from other human slaves. Their voices were hushed, fearful, but beneath the fear ran a current of simmering rage. He followed the sound, rounding a corner to find a group of captives huddled in a makeshift holding area. A towering man with corded muscles and a scarred face glared at Sean as he approached. "Who the hell are you?" the man growled. "I'm Sean Porter," he replied, keeping his voice low, "and I'm here to get you out." The man's eyes narrowed. "You expect us to believe that? How'd you even get on board?" A lean figure with close-cropped hair and sharp, intelligent eyes spoke up. "He's telling the truth, Marcus. Look at his hands. No restraints. And that coat's bulky enough to hide all sorts of interesting things." Sean nodded to the perceptive newcomer. "What's your name?" "Alex," came the reply. "And if you're really here to bust us out, you'd better have one hell of a plan." "I do," Sean said, reaching into his coat to produce a vial of shimmering liquid. "This is a counterplague, engineered to target Draconis physiology. We're going to use it to bring down their entire empire." A third man pushed forward, his lean frame belying a coiled intensity. "I'm Liam," he said, "and I think I know how we can maximize the impact of that little vial." As Sean outlined his mission and the devastating effects of the counterplague, he saw hope kindle in the eyes of the captives. Marcus's scowl softened, replaced by a fierce grin. Alex's fingers twitched, already envisioning the havoc they could wreak on Draconis systems. And Liam's mind raced, piecing together a strategy that could turn the tide of the war. "First things first," Sean said. "We need weapons." Marcus cracked his knuckles. "Leave that to me." The big man led them through the ship's winding corridors, deftly avoiding patrols. They reached the armory, where two Draconis guards stood watch. Before Sean could react, Marcus surged forward, his massive fist connecting with scaled flesh. The guards crumpled without a sound. "Impressive," Sean murmured. Marcus grinned. "Been waiting a long time to do that." They raided the armory, arming themselves with pulse rifles and plasma grenades. Alex found a data terminal, fingers flying over the alien interface. "Got it," they announced. "I've accessed their navigational data. We're headed for a planet called Zephyrus Prime." Liam's eyes lit up. "That's their hub world. If we can release the counterplague there." Sean nodded grimly. We'll cripple their entire operation. As the transport ship neared Zephyrus Prime, Sean and his newfound allies prepared for the fight of their lives. The stakes couldn't be higher. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. But for the first time since Earth fell, Sean felt a flicker of real hope. Together, they just might have a chance to turn the tables on their alien oppressors. The ship shuddered as it entered Zephyrus Prime's atmosphere. Sean checked his weapon one last time, exchanging determined looks with Marcus, Alex, and Liam. Whatever happened next, the Draconis would soon learn that humanity was far from defeated. The transport shuddered as it exited hyperspace, Zephyrus Prime looming large in the viewports. Sean's grip tightened on his pulse rifle as klaxons blared throughout the ship. Their presence had been detected. "So much for the element of surprise," Marcus growled. Plasma bolts slammed into the hull, rocking the vessel. Liam's fingers danced across the control panel. "Shields failing! We need to abort!" Sean gritted his teeth. "No, we press on." The ship plunged into the planet's atmosphere, trailing fire as Draconis fighters swarmed around them. Alex unleashed a barrage from the defense turrets, but it wasn't enough. A direct hit tore through the engine housing, sending them into an uncontrolled dive. "Brace for impact!" Sean shouted as the ground rushed up to meet them. The world dissolved into chaos and pain. When Sean regained consciousness, acrid smoke filled his lungs. He dragged himself from the wreckage, coughing blood. The others emerged, battered but alive. Draconis troops were already converging on the crash site. Sean's team fought desperately, cutting down waves of reptilian soldiers, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. A plasma bolt caught Sean in the side, searing through flesh and bone. He stumbled, vision blurring. "Fall back," he gasped. "To the shuttle!" They retreated under heavy fire, barely managing to reach their escape craft. As they limped away from Zephyrus Prime, Sean knew their mission had failed. The Draconis homeworld remained untouched, their empire intact. Days later, Sean awoke in the medical bay of the rebel outpost on HFY. His wounds were grave, but the Draconis weapons had cauterized as they tore through him. He would survive, though the scars would never fade. As soon as he could stand, Sean convened with his team. They pored over the intel they'd managed to retrieve during their aborted strike. Encrypted data pointed to a facility called Tartarus, a Draconis research installation on a desolate world. "Gene splicing," Alex murmured, decoding the files. "They're creating some kind of hybrid super soldiers." Sean's fist clenched. If the Draconis fielded an army of augmented warriors, the rebellion would be crushed. "We have to stop this," he said. "We need to hit Tartarus and shut it down." "You're in no shape for another mission," Liam protested. Sean silenced him with a glare. "I'll be ready. We leave in 48 hours. They acquired a Draconis cargo shuttle, its transponder codes falsified to slip past the facility's outer defenses. As they approached Tartarus, Sean steeled himself. His wounds ached, a constant reminder of their last failure. This time, they couldn't afford to fail. The shuttle touched down on the blighted surface. Icy winds howled across a landscape of jagged rock and steel. In the distance loomed Tartarus, a fortress of twisting metal and pulsing energy fields. "Patrol's incoming," Alex warned. Sean raised his rifle. "Let's move." Sean raised his rifle, scanning the bleak horizon of Tartarus. The team moved swiftly across the jagged terrain, their boots crunching on frozen gravel. As they neared the looming fortress, Alex's voice crackled over the comm. "Multiple contacts, northeast quadrant, heavy armor." "Evasive maneuvers," Sean ordered, leading them into a ravine. The ground trembled as Draconis war machines thundered past overhead. When the coast was clear, they emerged, pressing on toward Tartarus. At the facility's outer perimeter, Liam produced a device cobbled together from scavenged Draconis tech. "This should disrupt their energy shield," he whispered, activating it. The air shimmered, and a gap appeared in the crackling barrier. They slipped through, hugging the shadows of massive storage silos. Inside Tartarus, the team split up. Marcus and Liam headed for the power core, while Sean and Alex made for the central lab. Alarms blared sporadically, their presence detected but not pinpointed. Sean and Alex fought their way through squads of Draconis guards, their weapons set to maximum lethality. They reached the lab's sealed doors, Alex's fingers flying over the access panel. "We're in," they announced as the doors hissed open. The sight that greeted them was horrifying. Rows of stasis tanks lined the walls, each containing a grotesque hybrid of human and Draconis physiology. Muscled torsos rippled with scales. Clawed hands twitched in suspended animation. "My God," Sean breathed. "We have to destroy it all." As Alex began uploading a virus to corrupt the facility's research data, Sean planted demolition charges throughout the lab. A savage roar echoed from an adjoining chamber. One of the hybrids had awakened, tearing free from its containment. The creature lunged at Sean, its strength and speed terrifying. He emptied his rifle into its chest, but it kept coming. Claws raked across his armor, shredding metal. Sean drew his combat knife, plunging it into the hybrid's throat. It collapsed, twitching. "Charges set," Sean gasped. "Alex, status?" "Upload complete. This place is history." They sprinted from the lab, linking up with Marcus and Liam at the rendezvous point. The facility rocked with explosions as they fought their way to the landing pad where their shuttle waited. As they lifted off, Tartarus erupted in a chain of massive detonations. The Draconis super soldier program was no more. In orbit, they rendezvoused with the rebel fleet that had gathered in their absence. Ships of all sizes and configurations, a ragtag armada united against a common foe. Sean stood on the bridge of the flagship, surveying the assembled forces. This was humanity's last, best hope. He keyed the comm, addressing the fleet. "Today, we struck a blow against our oppressors, but our work is far from finished. The Draconis still hold countless worlds, and billions of our people remain enslaved. We will not rest until every human is free, and the Draconis threat is eliminated once and for all." A chorus of cheers erupted across the comm channels. As one, the rebel fleet engaged their drives, vanishing into the depths of space. Their destination, the heart of the Draconis Empire itself. The rebel fleet emerged from hyperspace in the Solaris system, their hard-fought victory against the Draconis Empire still fresh. Sean stood on the bridge of the flagship, his eyes fixed on the console as hundreds of ships filled the space around them. The makeshift armada represented every human world and colony that had thrown off the shackles of alien oppression. But the jubilation of their triumph was short-lived. Within days, the first cracks in their unity began to show. "We can't just lay down our arms." General Navarro's hologram loomed large in the war room, his face contorted with anger. "The Draconis may be defeated, but there are a dozen other threats waiting to pounce. We need a strong military to keep humanity safe." Across the table, Counselor Emira of the Proxima colonies shook her head. "No more war. We've seen enough bloodshed to last 1,000 lifetimes. It's time to dismantle our weapons and focus on rebuilding." Sean watched the heated exchange, a knot forming in his stomach. He caught Liam's eye across the room, seeing his own concern mirrored there. As the days passed, the arguments grew more heated. Navarro's faction pushed for a centralized military government, while Emira and her allies advocated for complete demilitarization. The debate spilled out from the war room and into the fleet at large. Tempers flared. Old grievances, long buried under the weight of alien oppression, bubbled to the surface. Sean worked tirelessly to broker compromises, but for every agreement reached, 2 more disputes erupted. He barely slept, shuttling between factions, mediating conflicts that threatened to tear their fledgling alliance apart. The situation came to a head when the Centauri worlds announced their intention to secede. "We will no longer be subject to the whims of Earth or any other power," their leader declared. "Centauri stands alone." Before Sean could even formulate a response, Navarro's ships were on the move. "This is how it begins," the general's voice boomed across the comms. "We crush this rebellion now, or watch everything we've fought for crumble." Sean watched in horror as Navarro's fleet approached Centauri Prime, weapons charged. He keyed the comm, his voice tight with urgency. "General Navarro, stand down immediately. This is not what we fought for." But Navarro was beyond reason. The first salvos streaked across space, slamming into Centauri's orbital defenses. The colony world's meager fleet was swiftly overwhelmed. Sean turned to Alex, who monitored the battle from the tactical station. Options? Alex's fingers flew over the controls. We're outgunned. Navarro's peeled off a significant portion of the fleet. If we engage, we risk splitting our forces permanently. Sean's mind raced. A direct confrontation would lead to all-out civil war, but he couldn't stand by and watch Navarro subjugate an entire world. Then, a desperate plan formed. The Draconis dreadnoughts, he said. Where are they? Liam's eyes widened as he caught on. You can't be serious. Dead serious, Sean replied. Plot a course. We're going to remind everyone what real power looks like. Hours later, as Navarro's forces closed in on Centauri Prime's capital, the sky lit up. Massive Draconis warships, thought long abandoned, blinked into existence above the embattled world. Their weapons ports glowed with nearly unleashed energy. Sean's voice cut across all channels. This is Sean Porter to all combatants. Stand down immediately or face the consequences. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then slowly, Navarro's ships began to power down their weapons. The tension drained from Sean's shoulders, but he knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The real work of unifying humanity had only just begun. Sean's gambit with the Draconis dreadnoughts had averted immediate disaster, but the underlying tensions remained. Months passed. Sean worked tirelessly to forge a lasting peace, brokering deals between factions and overseeing the dismantling of excess military hardware. Progress was slow, marked by setbacks and heated arguments, but gradually, a framework for unified human governance took shape. Then came the attacks. The first strike hit a civilian transport hub on New Terra. Antimatter charges vaporized thousands in an instant. Before the dust settled, similar devices detonated on 3 other worlds. Sean stared at the casualty reports, his face ashen. Who's claiming responsibility? Alex's voice was grim. A group calling themselves Human First. Their manifesto just hit the networks. The message was clear. No aliens, no collaborators. Humanity stands alone or burns. Over the following weeks, Human First's terror campaign intensified. Bombs, assassinations, sabotage. Each attack eroded trust, reigniting old hatreds. The fragile peace Sean had built began to crumble. In a secure bunker deep beneath the temporary capital, Sean convened an emergency meeting. Representatives from a dozen worlds attended, human and alien alike. We can't fight this threat alone, Sean said, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. Our forces are spread too thin, our intel networks compromised. We need help. Murmurs of dissent rippled through the chamber. An Arcturian diplomat, her tendrils twitching with agitation, spoke. Why should we risk our people to solve a human problem? Sean met her gaze. Because if we fall, you're next. Human First won't stop with us. They'll come for every non-human world in the sector. Reluctantly, the alien representatives agreed. A joint task force was formed. An unprecedented coalition of species united against a common foe. Their first mission came quickly. Human First operatives had seized control of a colonial outpost on Proxima 4. The coalition struck hard and fast, neutralizing the terrorists with surgical precision. In the command center of the retaken outpost, Sean's team made a chilling discovery. Liam's voice shook as he decrypted the files. They've got bioweapons, Ulian plague bombs. If they release these... Sean's blood ran cold. He keyed his comm, broadcasting to the entire coalition fleet. All ships, this is Sean Porter. We have a Code Black scenario. I repeat, Code Black. Prepare for immediate deployment. As the Allied Armada mobilized, a transmission cut across all channels. A scarred face filled the screens. Viktor Voronov, self-proclaimed leader of Human First. This is your final warning, Voronov snarled. Disband your alien-loving government and expel all non-humans from our space, or we unleash hell. You have 24 hours to comply. Sean cut the feed, turning to his team. We need to find those bioweapons before the deadline. Alex, start compiling a list of potential Human First strongholds. Liam, I want every scrap of intel we have on Voronov and his top lieutenants. As his crew sprang into action, Sean allowed himself a moment of grim reflection. The next day would determine the fate of not just humanity, but every sentient species in the sector. One way or another, this war would end. Sean's eyes scanned the faces of his assembled team. We have less than 24 hours. Failure is not an option. As the coalition forces mobilized, a new figure stepped forward from the shadows of the command center. Zara, her dark eyes blazing with intensity, addressed the group. I have a plan, but it's going to require sacrifice. She laid out her stratagem, detailing the formation of an elite strike force to neutralize human-first command centers before Voronov could unleash the alien plague. The room fell silent as she introduced her chosen operatives, Cairo, Alara, and Dax. Kiro's weathered face betrayed no emotion as he studied the tactical overlays. Alara's fingers danced across her datapad, already probing human-first defenses. Dax stood apart, his augmented physique a testament to the very hybridization human-first despised. We strike 3 targets simultaneously, Zara continued. Calypso Prime, Hadrian's Folly, and Tyr's Anvil. Intel suggests these are Voronov's primary bases of operation. The next hours passed in a blur of preparation. Weapons were checked and rechecked. Battle plans were scrutinized down to the smallest detail. As the deadline approached, tension coiled like a spring throughout the coalition fleet. On Calypso Prime, Kiro's squad materialized in the heart of the colony's capital. The streets erupted in chaos as human-first forces engaged them. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, reducing buildings to slag. Push forward, Kiro bellowed, his voice carrying over the din of battle. His troops advanced methodically, securing block after block. Bodies littered the ground. Human-first zealots and civilians caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, Alara's team infiltrated the orbital defense network above Hadrian's Folly. Her fingers flew across holographic interfaces, dismantling firewalls and rerouting security protocols. We're in, she announced, her voice tight with concentration. Planetary defenses are down. Dax, you have a go. On the planet's surface, Dax led his squad through the maze-like corridors of the human-first bunker. Enhanced muscles rippled beneath his armor as he tore through security checkpoints. Captured officers broke under interrogation, revealing a chilling truth. Voronov had relocated his command, and his true plan was far worse than they had imagined. As reports flooded in from the 3 operations, Zara's face hardened. She turned to Sean, her voice low. We need to change tactics. I'm going to draw Voronov out personally. Before Sean could object, alarms blared throughout the command center. Security feeds showed chaos erupting in the corridors outside, an assassination attempt on Zara herself. In the ensuing bedlam, Zara vanished. Coalition channels exploded with reports of her death. But as Human First celebrated their apparent victory, a trap was springing shut. On Tyr's Anvil, Voronov strode confidently through his fortress, savoring his imminent triumph. The doors to his command center hissed open, and his smugness evaporated. Zara stood before him, very much alive, flanked by Dax and a full contingent of coalition troops. It's over, Voronov, she said, her voice cold as steel. Voronov's personal guard sprang into action, but they were no match for Dax's augmented strength. The hybrid soldier tore through them seamlessly, leaving Voronov exposed. With a snarl of rage, the human first leader charged Zara. Their bodies collided in a brutal display of hand-to-hand combat. Voronov's superior size and strength seemed to give him the advantage, but Zara's speed and technique kept her in the fight. Blood spattered the floor as they traded blows. Voronov landed a crushing hit to Zara's ribs, but she countered with a vicious elbow strike that shattered his nose. The 2 combatants circled each other, both battered but unbowed. In a lightning-fast sequence, Zara feinted left, then dropped low. Her leg swept out, catching Voronov's ankle. As he stumbled, she surged upward, driving her palm into his solar plexus with bone-crushing force. Voronov's eyes bulged. He staggered back, gasping for air. Zara pressed her advantage, unleashing a flurry of strikes that drove the human first leader to his knees. With a final decisive blow, Zara ended the fight. Voronov collapsed, his reign of terror finally at an end. As news of Voronov's defeat spread, human-first forces across the sector began to surrender. But Zara knew the real work was just beginning. Dismantling the organization's infrastructure and combating its hateful ideology would be a long, difficult process. She turned to her team, her expression grim but determined. Secure the bioweapons and round up any remaining human-first leaders. We've won the battle, but we've still got a long way to go to win the peace. Zara surveyed the aftermath of Voronov's defeat, her eyes scanning the bustling command center. Screens flickered with reports from across human space as coalition forces methodically dismantled Human First's remaining strongholds. She turned to Sean, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and determination. We've won the battle, but now comes the hard part, she said, her voice low. Reintegrating these people into society. Sean nodded grimly. It won't be easy. Many still cling to their ideology. Over the following months, Zara spearheaded ambitious reconciliation programs. Former Human First members were offered counseling, job training, and opportunities to work alongside the very aliens they once despised. Progress was painstakingly slow. In a remote outpost on Epsilon Eridani IV, Zara addressed a group of hardliners. We're stronger together, she insisted, humans and aliens alike. A burly man with a scarred face spat at her feet. Never, he snarled. Before Zara could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. She sprinted to the command center, where Sean's hologram flickered to life. We're under attack, he said, his voice tight with urgency. An unknown alien force. They've deployed some kind of nanoweapon. Our systems are going haywire. Zara's blood ran cold as reports flooded in. Across human space, power grids failed. Space stations went dark. Starships drifted lifeless. Millions perished as life support systems shut down. Who are they? Zara demanded. They call themselves the Carthaean Primacy, Sean replied. Ancient, powerful, and they see us as a threat. As communication channels fell silent and defense networks turned against their creators, Zara made a desperate decision. She turned to the very people she had been trying to rehabilitate. In a secure bunker, she faced down Navarro and other Human First generals. I'm offering you full pardons, she said, in exchange for your help against this invasion. Navarro's eyes narrowed. Why should we trust you? Because if we fall, humanity falls, Zara replied. All of us. After a tense moment, Navarro nodded. We're in. The unlikely alliance bolstered Earth's defenses as the Carthaean armada pressed inward. Zara coordinated counterattacks from a hardened command post, her fingers flying over holographic displays. EMP strike successful in the Procyon system, an aide reported. Nanoswarms neutralized. But for every victory, 2 more systems fell. Zara's face grew haggard as the casualty reports mounted. In a private meeting with her inner circle, she unveiled a plan that sent shockwaves through the room. We finish what Human First started, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We deploy the Ulian genophage. Gasps and protests erupted. Navarro, however, nodded grimly. It's the only way, he agreed. As the Carthon fleet prepared its final push, Zara gave the order. Missiles streaked across the void, detonating in carefully chosen systems. The effects were immediate and horrifying. Carthon's ships drifted powerless as their organic crews disintegrated. Humanity seized its chance. A fierce counteroffensive drove the invaders back. System after system fell as the genophage purged all Carthaean presence. Zara watched from the bridge of her flagship as another alien world burned. Victory was at hand, but the cost took a toll upon her. As reports of the Carthon's last high-stakes endeavor came in, she knew her work was not nearly finished. Prepare a strike team, she ordered. We're going to the heart of the primacy. Carthaean capital world. The air crackled with ozone and the acrid stench of plasma discharge as Zara's infiltration team fought their way through the labyrinthine corridors. Alarms blared, casting strobing red light across alien architecture. Push forward, Zara shouted, her voice barely audible over the din of battle. Cairo and Dax flanked her, their weapons spitting death at the waves of Carthaean defenders. They burst into a cavernous chamber dominated by a pulsing energy core. Holographic displays flickered with alien script, incomprehensible yet ominous. The stellar ignition nexus, Alara breathed, her eyes wide. She sprinted to a nearby console, fingers flying across alien interfaces. They've already initiated the supernova sequence. Zara's fist tight. How long? Minutes, maybe less, Alara replied, not looking up from her work. Uploading the virus now. A thunderous boom shook the chamber. Elite Carthan shock troops poured through breached bulkheads, their chitinous armor gleaming in the eerie light of the Nexus. Cover her, Zara ordered, diving behind a half-melted barrier. Cairo and Dax took up flanking positions, their weapons chattering in controlled bursts. The air filled with deadly projectiles. Polarized railgun slugs pinged off surfaces with metallic shrieks. Zara leaned out, her particle beam cutting down 3 Carthan in rapid succession. A bone-rattling explosion rocked the chamber. Zara's head snapped around to see Dax's augmented form flying through the air, a gaping hole in his chest. Time seemed to slow as his eyes met hers, a final look of grit etched on his face. With inhuman strength, Dax hurled himself into the path of an antimatter charge streaking toward Zara. His body disintegrated in a blinding flash, the shockwave throwing Zara back against the wall. Dax! She screamed, grief and rage warring in her voice. But there was no time to mourn. The battle raged on, more intense than ever. Zara fought her way to Alara's position, her movements mechanical, fueled by adrenaline and purpose. Status? Virus uploaded, Alara reported, her face pale. But the VI's backup protocols, they're initiating an emergency rupture sequence. We can't stop it. As if to punctuate her words, a deep rumble shook the entire facility. On the main display, a representation of the Carthon's artificial sun pulsed ominously, fracture lines spreading across its surface. Evacuate now, Zara ordered, grabbing Alara's arm and signaling to Kiro. They sprinted for the extraction point, the sounds of pursuit close behind. They rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. A solid wall of Carthan troops blocked their path, weapons trained on the humans. Zara's mind raced, assessing options in microseconds. She locked eyes with Kiro, a silent understanding passing between them. With a nod, she turned to Alara. Get to the ship, Zara said, her voice brooking no argument. You have to survive. You have to tell our story. Before Alara could protest, Zara spun and charged the Carthon line. Her weapon blazed, cutting a swath through the alien ranks. Go! She roared over her shoulder. Kiro hesitated for a split second, then grabbed Alara and ran. The sound of Zara's last stand faded behind them as they raced toward salvation. They burst onto a landing pad just as the sky began to glow with unnatural light. The extraction ship's engines roared to life as Cairo all but threw Alara inside. As the ship lifted off, Alara pressed her face to a viewport. The Carthan capital stretched out below, an alien metropolis about to be erased from existence. Somewhere in that doomed city, Zara fought her final battle. A blinding flash erupted from the planet's core. The shockwave raced outward, consuming everything in its path. Alara squeezed her eyes shut as tears streamed down her face. The ship accelerated hard, fleeing the supernova's wrath. Behind them, an empire died in fire.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.